Hey guys, welcome back to another great game of CEDH. By the time you're seeing this, Command Fest Worcester will already be over with, but thank you for everyone that stopped by. The games we got in were really fun, so definitely check back in a few weeks to have them up on the channel. Also, for anyone going to ConnectiCon this weekend, I'll have a booth in Artist Alley this year. I'm selling my sweet mtga apparel and some brand new hats for the con, so be sure to swing by. But starting us off today is Zen from the Cardboard Junkies, trying out CEDH for the first time with Glarb. His moistness is off Doomsday, well at least for now, aiming to control the board from the top of his library. Next up is Hidden on Kotis. This is a Sultai Voltron strategy, aiming for a mix of pump spells and equipment to gain card advantage from stealing your opponent's best spells off the top. In the third spot is Daniel Kane, who does a lot in the magic space, on Emet-Selch. The mere self-mill never looks so good now that you have a Yogg's Will in the command zone. Besides, it's not like this format uses the graveyard much anyways. And bringing up the rear is Joe Kilcar from the Thought Vessels podcast on Esika. And while this might be a little bit of a spoiler, this isn't the standard Turbonauz version of the deck, but instead a 5-color polymorph strategy.
Alright, block there, kill that. Oh, that is trample. Guess I'm just dead on board.
We actually have two pregame actions, as both Daniel and Joe put in a Gemstone Caverns into play, with Daniel exiling a basic island and Joe exiling a Wooded Foothills. Zen then starts off the game proper with a Wooded Foothills of his own, cracking the land for a tropical island, but passes it there. Hidden has an Underground Sea, and with the help of an exiled Elvish Spirit Guide, casts an Arcane Signet. Daniel has an Undercity Sewers and surveils a Cephalid Coliseum to the grave. Joe plays out a Cydia Brass and a Lotus Petal, tapping out to cast his commander Esika. Zen then draws for turn and casts a Soul Ring into a Windswept Heath. Hidden will take 2 for an untapped Breeding Pool and ends his turn with an Agassiz Soul Cauldron. Daniel has a Verdant Catacombs, which he cracks for an untapped Watery Grave, with Zeb taking the chance to crack his own fetch, grabbing out a Bayou, with Daniel then casting his commander Emmet, who on ETB loots away a Drown in the Loch. Joe bolts himself for an untapped Soporific Springs, dinging himself another as he casts a Shorikai and passes. Zen plays out a Cydia Brass and ends his turn with his commander Glarb, with Hidden at end step using his Cauldron to exile the Drown in the Loch. Hidden shocks in an Overgrown Tomb, and for 4 casts his commander Kotis. Daniel on his turn has an island, and then slams down a Sheoldred, who resolves as he then heads to combat. He sends Emmet at Joe, with the on-attack trigger looting away a Mistrized Village, and gaining him 2 life off Sheoldred. Joe draws for turn, and takes 2 off his draw. But life total is just a number, as he pays 1 to activate Shorikai. He draws 2, discards a Stomping Ground, makes a Pilot, and loses 4 from Sheoldred, ending his turn with a tapped Godless Shrine and a Mystic Remora. Zen takes 2 off his draw and casts a Deathrite Shaman, with Hidden at end step exiling the Mistrized Village. Hidden takes 2 off his draw and has a Polluted Delta as land, cracking the fetch for a tropical island, but passes it after that. Daniel gains 2 from his draw as he casts a Windfall. And while Joe doesn't wait for his Mystic trigger, he slams down a Fierce Guardianship. Although Daniel doesn't give him a second thought as he fires off a Fierce of his own. To which Joe then goes empty-handed on a Force of Negation, exiling a Mindbreak Trap to do so. With the stack then clearing, and Joe drawing twice off the fish and taking another 4. Daniel then heads to combat and sends Emmet back at Joe, who will chump with a Pilot, as Daniel then loots away a different Emmet and gains 2. Joe then untaps and lets his fish go. He takes 2 and then hard casts a Git Probe on Zeb's hand of 4. Joe then draws off the probe and takes another 2. He has a tapped Blood Crypt as land and passes, as Hidden on end step uses his Cauldron to exile the discarded Emmet and gain Kotis a counter. Zeb will lose 2 on his draw and then taps Glarb to surveil 2. He mills both a Grim Monolith and an Oppo, as then for 3 casts a Dryad of the Elysian Grove. Although unfortunately he continues to miss on land as he passes it there. Hidden takes 2 as he then plays out a Tabernacle of the Pendril Vale as land for turn, but passes it there as Kotis seems like a better blocker right now. Daniel untaps and pays for his creatures. He'll gain 2 off the draw and then plays out a Mystic Sanctuary as land return, which enters untapped as he attempts to put a Fierce back on top. Granted, Cedh will respond by eating it with his Deathrite and losing the table 2 more life. Daniel then casts a Blue Mage's Cane and then heads to combat as he continues to put pressure on Joe as he turns his board sideways. Daniel will loot away a creature as Joe responds before blockers are declared. He activates Shortguy to loot as he discards a Savines, loses 4, and uses the pilot to chump the Shieldred, and have Esika bounce off Emet. Joe untaps and pays to keep his commander. He'll lose 2, and for 2 cast an Imposter Mech, to which Hidden attempts a Strict Serenade, although Joe fires off a Veil of Summer, to which Hidden mentals it, with the stack clearing and Joe getting a 2/2 bird.
You really want me to die?
I don't want 2 Shieldreds, it's a little too much. You do get a 2/2 bird.
I do.
I gave you a Shieldred blocker.
I didn't need a shoulder blocker. I needed to not die.
I have bad news for you.
Plus, I saved you 2 life from drawing off the Veil of Summer.
I mean,
Fair point here. Let's be honest.
I didn't want that. I wanted to live.
Joe then plays out an Arid Mesa, cracking the land to grab out a volcanic island, but passes it there, with Hidden at end step eating the Oppo to grow Kotis once again. Cedh untaps and responding to the Tabernacle triggers, taps his Glarb to surveil 2. He bins an Arcane Signet and then pays to keep his creatures around, as he then draws for turn and loses 2 more life. A Marshblast will then come out as land for turn as he cracks it for an Underground Sea and passes. Hidden pays for his creature and loses 2 on his draw. He has a Waterlogged Grove as land and casts the last card in his hand, which happens to be a Rhystic Study, as he ends his turn there. Daniel untaps, loses his hero token, and gains 2 off his draw. He then spends the rest of his mana to equip Emet with his cane. He'll then head to combat, sending Emet at Joe. There are 2 triggers as he exiles Joe's Savines and loots away a Reanimate, with the commanders bouncing off each other once again. And Joe at end step Shortguying to dig. Joe then untaps and only keeps his commander around, and casts a Mana Vault. He pays for the Rhystic, with Cedh at end step exiling a Reanimate off the Deathrite, and Hidden exiling a creature to grow Kotis. Cedh then untaps and responds to the Tabernacle with Glarb. He mills a Kitsa and keeps the other card. Cedh will pay to keep his creatures around, as he then casts a Bloom Tender. He pays the 1 off the Rhystic and passes it there. Hidden untaps, pays, and loses 2 off his draw, but just hands the turn over. Daniel keeps his creatures around and gains 2. He then heads to combat and sends Emet at Joe, exiling Joe's Git Probe on attack. But with the Emet trigger still in the stack, Daniel casts a Dark Ritual. Hidden will draw off the Rhystic and take 2, as Daniel makes 3 black mana and uses it to actually cast the exiled Git Probe, targeting Hidden. Hidden will draw again and lose 2 as Daniel takes a peek. We then resolve the Emet trigger as he discards a Hullbreaker Horror. Next up is blocks, as Emet will bounce off Esika as Daniel then ends his turn there. Joe pays for Esika and drops the 2 from the Shieldred. And with nothing left to do, Joe casts a Polymorph on his Esika, to which Hidden uses his Agathas to exile Cedh's Kitsa. Now, Hidden thought he was being clever, but Kitsa can only copy his own spells. Joe will pay the 1 off the Rhystic, as he then flips his deck over till he finds a Thassa's Oracle, but unfortunately doesn't have the Tainted Pact to go for it, as he then looks at the top 3 and keeps 1 on top, ending his turn with a Talisman of Dominance, continuing to pay the 1. Cedh untaps and once again Glarbs. He keeps both on top as he pays for Tabernacle. He'll then lose 2 from the draw, and then another 2 from an untapped Overgrown Tomb, but passes it there, with Hidden at end step cracking his Waterlogged Grove to draw and lose 2. Hidden keeps his commander around, loses 2, and then plays out a Yavimaya as land for turn. He then casts his own Deathrite and follows it up with a Wild Growth on his Underground Sea. Hidden then heads to combat and sends a 6-power Kotis at Daniel, who actually chumps with Emet. Daniel then heads to his turn, untaps, and pays to keep his shieldred around. He gains 2 and then casts a Glimpse the Unthinkable to mill himself 10. Next up is combat, as he sends shieldred at Cedh for 4, who doesn't block, with Daniel passing it there.
In response to passing the turn. You can't take me out, children. I take me out.
With Cedh now at end step, flashing in a Notion Thief. He'll pay for Ristic and then exiles Daniel's D-Tutor to ping the table for 2. Cedh untaps and keeps his creatures around. He'll use Glarb to surveil 2, keeping both on top, and then plays out a Verdant off the top. But he continues to just leave mana open, with Hidden at end step exiling the Hullbreaker to grow Kotis. Hidden pays for the Tabernacle and takes 2. He then heads to combat and sends 7 at Daniel, with this time his commander actually connecting, as Daniel exiles the top 7. Although to Hidden's unfortunate, he finds quite a few lands, but managed to cast a Bone Miser and an Angel of Despair. Daniel once again pays and gains 2. He then for 2 casts a Dauthi Voidwalker. He'll equip Shouldred with a Cane and then moves to combat. But before he can declare attackers, Cedh casts a Legolas's Quick Reflexes to untap his Glarb, and then retap it to surveil and put 2 Death Touch damage on Shieldred. Cedh then keeps both on top, as Daniel then passes the turn, and Cedh cycles a Born Upon the Wind to draw, and then attempts to eat the Shieldred with his Deathrite, to which Hidden responds by eating the creature instead with his Agathas. Cedh heads to his turn and has plenty of mana to keep his creatures around. He'll use Glarb to surveil a Chromox and a Fairy Mastermind to the Dauthi zone, with Hidden at end step eating a Phyrexian Metamorph to gain 2 off his own Deathrite. Hidden untaps and pays 4 for the Tabernacle. He then casts his own Chromox and imprints a Birds of Paradise, following that up with a Sword of Wealth and Power, which resolves as Hidden then suits up Kotis and sends the commander at Daniel for 10. But before damage can happen, Cedh hard casts a Force of Vigor to take out the sword and the cauldron, with Hidden using the cauldron to exile a creature before the artifacts get blown up, with Daniel now only taking 8 instead of 10, this time exiling much better hits. There are no responses, as Hidden then casts a Soul Ring, Ledger Shredder, Adeline, Bloodchief's Ascension, and an Entomb, binning a Damnation to the Dauthi zone, with Hidden then getting a quest counter on his end step. Daniel then untaps and responding to the Tabernacle, sacks the Dauthi. He then heads to his first main and casts the tutored up Damnation to wipe the board of everything but Kotis, with Cedh then using his Deathrite to ping the table for 2, and Daniel then following that up with his commander Emet. He gives a card to Hidden and then loots away a Consider, with Hidden getting another quest counter at end step. Cedh untaps and recasts Glarb. Hidden draws as Cedh passes it there. Hidden untaps and pays for the Tabernacle. He then casts a Bridgework Battle in an attempt to fight Glarb, to which Cedh casts a Misdirection, pitching a Mnemonic Betrayal. He pays the 1 as Emet gets taken out instead. Hidden then heads to combat and is not sure where to point Kotis at, as he wants the cards and his attack would take Daniel out. So Hidden chooses to send 11 at Zen, who actually takes the hit, this time exiling 11 cards. And man, are these cards spicy, as Hidden has a Demonic Tutor, Tainted Pact, and a Demonic Consult. And with these, he can stack the 3 tutors along with a few other cards, and even with Zen countering the Demonic, Hidden can still Tainted Pact for thrasios, and then exile the rest with the Demonic Consult, letting Hidden then cast the Wizard, and then win him the game. Game review. Man, what can I say other than Shieldred was the MVP of that game, basically keeping Joe in check for drawing all those extra cards. Granted, I also think it helps that both Glarb and Kotis both drew Graveyard Hate as well, which kept Emet in check as well. Man, although I did love seeing that Entomb Damnation, which wiped the board. Well, mine is Kotis, of course. But again, I want to thank Daniel, Joe, and Cedh for joining me for this game, and if you want to find them, I will have their socials linked down below. Thanks to everyone that joined for the game, and before everyone leaves, I want to thank our special Patreon members, Slyfox and Holy Septic, for their support of the channel. along with all of our other Patreon supporters as well. And remember, never give up, even if you're dead on board. I'll see you guys later.